This broadcast is brought to you by the British Israel Church of God. The Watchman Program. Evangelist and commentator Peter Salemi, bringing you the truth about today's world news in the light of Bible prophecy.
You and I were born in a ready-made world. We didn't come up with a lot of these festivals that people celebrate every single year. You and I didn't come up with a festival called Easter or Christmas or All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day. These festivals were already here. And of course, these festivals have been taught to us by our parents, our peer groups, whatever. They've been taught to us since our childhood, and we automatically just celebrate these festivals because they've been taught to us by our elders. And we automatically just celebrate these days without looking into its origins. Most people are ignorant of the origins of the festivals that they celebrate. Now, if you notice, if you start driving around people's neighborhoods, you're starting to see people put up pumpkins and black cats and witches and goblins in the front of their houses, preparing for a festival coming up called Halloween. And most people are ignorant of its origins. Most people just automatically assume it's a Christian celebration. Is it? Is it Christian? What do black cats and witches and goblins have to do with Jesus Christ of Nazareth? And you're also noticing on TV, you're starting to see they're playing Halloween movies where you see a lot of mischief, a lot of murder, a lot of mayhem. And they call it Halloween movies. And it's apparently a so-called Christian festival. What does murder, mayhem, witchcraft, Satan the devil, what does this have to do with Jesus Christ? Well, most people just aren't really interested in its origins. They just automatically assume it's a Christian celebration. A lot of Halloween parties take place in church basements. They just automatically assume it's Christian, and nothing could be further from the truth. Where did Halloween come from? What about the word Halloween? The origins of the word Halloween, it's actually All Hallowed Evening, because November 1st was All Saints' Day. So the evening before that was called All Hallowed Eve, or what we call today Halloween. A lot of people don't know that. What about All Saints' Day? Where did that come from? And why do children dress up in costumes and yell out trick or treat when they go to a person's home? Where did that come from? What are the origins of all of these things? And it's interesting, I remember when I was a kid, Halloween was strictly for the children for the most part, but now more and more adults are celebrating Halloween. And it's only second in celebration to Christmas. And of course, it generates millions and millions of dollars every single year. Yet people just don't look into its origins. Is it Christian? Well, I want to offer you this free booklet, The Origins of Halloween, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. You can go to our website and download it from there. And of course, we'll put the links underneath the YouTube player, and you can download it directly from there. What are the origins of Halloween? Is it Christian? Well, when I come back, I'll go through some of these customs to show you that they are not Christian, and they actually originate in paganism. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that troubled him, and Daniel the prophet came to explain what that dream meant. At first he saw a head of gold, and that was the Chaldean Empire, his empire. After that came the arms of silver, and that was the Persian Empire. After that empire came the torso of brass, and that was the Greco-Macedonian Empire. And after that empire came the two legs of iron, and that was the Roman Empire. After this came the part potter's clay and part iron, which is NATO and the EU in our modern day. And then the iron mixed with miry clay. That is the last resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire that will fight Christ at his coming. For more details, log on to our website at britishisrael.ca and download your free booklet, What is the Beast of Revelation? Free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca.
So what are the origins of Halloween? Is it Christian? You can't find the word Halloween in the pages of the Bible. So where did it come from? Well, when you look into history, you will find that this festival of Halloween actually predates Jesus Christ, and its origins lie with the pagan Druids of Ireland and Scotland. There was a festival during that time called the Festival of Samhain. Now, Samhain was called Lord of the Dead, and we see who the Lord of the Dead is in Hebrews, the 2nd chapter, verse 14. It says that through death, he, that's Jesus Christ, might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So the Lord of the Dead is Satan the devil, and Samhain is the Lord of the Dead. Samhain is Satan the devil. So they had this festival called the Festival of Samhain. And this source writes that Samhain is a pagan religious festival. It's not Christian at all. Originating from an ancient Celtic spiritual tradition. In modern times, Samhain, usually celebrated from October 31st to November 1st, and that's, of course, All Saints' Day, which is a Catholic tradition, Catholic festival, to November 1st to welcome in the harvest and usher in the dark half of the year. Of course, winter's coming up, and it's usually dark during that time. Celebrants believe that the barriers between the physical world and the spirit world would break down during Samhain, allowing more interaction between humans and, of course, the spirit world. So this is where we get the evil spirits from, interacting with human beings, especially on the night of All Hallowed Evening. Now this source writes, Ruth Kelly says, the pagan Druid priests taught the immortality of the soul, that it passed from one body to another at death. They believed that on the last night of the old year, October 31st, the Lord of Death gathered together the souls of all of those who had died in the passing year and had been condemned to live in the bodies of animals, to decree what forms they should inhabit for the next 12 months. And of course, he could be convinced to give lighter sentences by gifts and prayers. And on the new year, which is November 1st, their sins had been expiated. They were released to go to Druid heaven. And that's from Halloween through 20 centuries on page 5. So here we see that November 1st, they would go to Druid heaven afterwards, after the All Hallowed Evening. And of course, we see prayers given and gifts were given. And this is the origin of trick or treat. Why do children say trick or treat? Well, Lincoln says here, certainly it comes from pagan times. In Ireland, up to the turn of the century, it was customary to have a procession led by a man in a white robe wearing a horse head mask. And this horse head was sacred to the sun god, Lincoln says, which indicates that this custom was a survival of a Druid rite. And then he goes on to say here, the procession levied a contribution from the farmers in the perverted name of what probably was an old Druid god. Unless the procession was treated liberally with gifts, the farmers were tricked with the treat of a curse that would ruin next year's crops. That's one of the origins of trick-or-treat. The other origin here by History.com says trick-or-treating is said to have been derived from ancient Irish and Scottish practices, which is one of the practices I just read. In the nights leading up to Samhain, in Ireland, mumming was the practice of putting on costumes, going door to door, and singing songs to the dead. Cakes were given as payment. So they would come to your door and you would give them cakes as payment so they wouldn't haunt, the evil spirits wouldn't haunt your house. And then it says Halloween pranks have also had a tradition in Samhain. In the ancient celebrations, tricks were typically blamed on fairies. And, you know, a lot of pranks going on at Halloween in the old times. In the 1930s and 40s, they would take bars of soap and rub it all over your door screens and so on. This was the trick that people would play on people if they didn't get a treat. So trick-or-treating of course, comes from the ancient pagans as well. So here we see some of the origins of Halloween, and it's got nothing to do with Jesus Christ of Nazareth, but it did creep into the so-called Christian religion. When did that happen, and how did that happen? Well, before I get on with that, again, I want to offer you this free booklet, The Origins of Halloween, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. Take a look at this, and I'll be right back.
The richest, most powerful group of nations on earth, the United States and British Commonwealth, are part of one of the most mysterious puzzles of all time. The prophecies of the Bible mention such small nations as Libya, Syria, and Ethiopia, but they seem to omit all reference to our peoples. How could such important nations be left out of inspired prophecy? This mysterious puzzle is unraveled in the full-length book, The United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy. This book reveals the true identity of our peoples from the pages of your Bible, and yet it goes beyond past history and shows you what to expect in the future. For your free copy of The United States and British Commonwealth in Prophecy,
log on to our website at britishisrael.ca for your free download.
How did this Druidic festival creep into the so-called Christian church? Well, it has to do with the Catholic celebration of All Saints' Day. Now, before All Saints' Day was created, they would assign certain days to certain saints. I remember my late grandmother used to call me up on St. Peter's Day, and she would call me up and she'd say, "Happy St. Peter's Day, Peter." And I'd say, "Oh, thanks, Grandma. Appreciate the phone call." So certain days are assigned to certain saints. Now, this article says this about All Saints' Day. It says a special day was set aside to honor each of the many well-known saints. Of course, there were many who were never recognized since their good works had gone unnoticed. And as the number of saints grew, there were not enough days in the year to accommodate all of them. So it was suggested that there be one day in the year to honor all saints. And that was November 1st. But why November 1st? Why would they pick November 1st? Well, History.com says this. As Christianity gained a foothold in pagan communities, church leaders attempted to reframe Samhain as a Christian celebration. Remember, November 1st, all these spirits went to Druidic heaven. And of course, the Catholic Church believes in the immortality of the soul and dying and going to heaven. So they picked November 1st as All Saints' Day. They took this Festival of Samhain and reworked it and called it All Saints' Day. It says the first attempt was by Pope Boniface in the 5th century. He moved the celebration to May 13th and specified it as a day celebrating saints and martyrs. The fire festivals of October and November, however, did not end with this decree. Then in the 9th century, Pope Gregory moved the celebration back to the time of the fire festivals, but declared it All Saints' Day on November 1st. All Souls' Day would follow on November 2nd. And if you know any Catholics, my mom on November 1st and 2nd would always light a candle for her dead father and mother and other people that she knows. A lot of Catholics do this. They light a candle because it's All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day. So they picked this festival of Samhain, the day when these spirits would go to Druidic heaven. They would pick this pagan day and reworked it, called it Christian, and called it All Saints' Day. Yet it's got nothing to do with the Christian religion.
I said, well, guilty.
Download your free booklet, Is There Really a Hellfire? at britishisrael.ca or call or text for a free hard copy at 905-447-4415 or 416-898-7407.
History shows that this festival of Samhain originated with the Druids and the Celts. But who are the Druids? Who are the Celts? Can we find out their origins? Well, yes, we can. And when we find out the origins of the Druids and the Celts, we actually find the original purpose for this festival called Samhain, which is, of course, called Hallowe'en today. Now, in our booklet, The United States and Britain in Prophecy, we show you the origins of the Celts and the Druids. You can download this booklet off our website, britishisrael.ca, for a free download. And of course, we will put the link underneath the YouTube player, and you can download it directly from there as well. In that booklet, we show you the origins of the Druids and the Celts. Now, we find that the northern 10-tribe house of Israel, when they got taken away by the Assyrians, the Assyrians did not call the house of Israel Hebrews or Israelites. They named them after their king Omri. King Omri had a very splendid reign, and he was very well known among the Gentile people. So the Assyrians called the house of Israel Bit Cumri. And the Bit Cumri were taken away and placed between the Black and the Caspian Sea. And they were known as the Kimbric peoples, the Cimmerians, the Humbri, the Humbers. And these people, called the Kimri, the Cimmerians, the Greeks called these people the Celts. So the Celts are the house of Israel. And the house of Israel had a priesthood. Now, where did this priesthood originate from? Well, in 1 Kings, the 12th chapter, here we see Jeroboam. Jeroboam was king over the house of Israel. And in verse 26 of 1 Kings 12, it says that Jeroboam said in his heart, "Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David." He was worried that the house of Israel, in their pilgrimage feast to Jerusalem, he was worried that if they continue to go to Jerusalem, that eventually they would reject him as king and go back to the house of David, as it says in verse 27. It says, "If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah." So what did he do? Well, he used religion to keep the house of Israel away from Jerusalem. It says here in verse 28, it says, "Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." Then he set up one in Bethel, and the other one he put up in Dan. And then it says, "And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan." So this became a sin to the house of Israel, and you see this sin being continued throughout the book of Kings till they got taken away into captivity by the Assyrians. Now notice verse 31. It says, "And he," this is Jeroboam, "made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of people, which were not of the sons of Levi." And this is the origins of the Druids. Remember, they got taken away, and they were called the Kimbric peoples. The Greeks called these people the Celts, and they had a priesthood. This is the priesthood, and these Celtic peoples, this priesthood, eventually became the Druids of Ireland and Scotland, because we can trace the migrations of the Celts from the Black and the Caspian Sea all the way up into Ireland and Scotland. So he made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. This is the Druids. Now notice verse 32. It says, "And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month." That's October. October means the 8th month. Now, there are 2 more months that were added by Julius and Augustus. These 2 pompous jackasses thought they were divine and gods, and they felt that a month should be dedicated to them. So they added 2 more months, but originally October was the 8th month, and November was the 9th month, and December was the 10th month. So here we see that he ordained a feast in the 8th month, which is October. On the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. That's the Feast of Tabernacles. So here we see a counterfeit Feast of Tabernacles taking place 1 month later in the 8th month. It's a counterfeit Feast of Tabernacles in the 8th month. And he ordained this feast to keep the house of Israel away from Jerusalem. It's a counterfeit Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the Feast of Tabernacles pictures the resurrection and the entering into the kingdom of God. And then we have the last great day of the feast, which pictures the general resurrection of the whole human race and getting their first chance for salvation. Here we see the last day of that feast in the 8th month, the Feast of Samhain, called Hallowe'en today, where eventually these evil spirits enter into Druid heaven. It is actually mocking the last great day of the feast, where all of humankind get their first chance for salvation and entering into the kingdom of God. This last day, called Hallowe'en, actually mocks the whole picture of the salvation of the human race. And this is the origins of All Hallowed Evening. Get this free booklet, The Origins of Hallowe'en, free of charge, off our website, britishisrael.ca. This is Peter Salemi saying goodbye, friends, and I'll see you here next time on the Watchman program.